Growing youth work. Module 3, Impact Assessment. Welcome to Module 3, Impact Assessment. During this module, we will go through 4 different areas. First, we will explain important tools to impact assessment under the first topic, understanding the terminology. Then we will move on to explaining the Impact Plus tool. We will then move on to illustrating how to use the Impact Plus tool as a framework. And finally, we will explain how to collect data for your project. Welcome participants to part 1 of Module 3, Impact Assessment. This module will provide you with a comprehensive understanding of the key terms and concepts used in impact assessment. There are 3 main learning objectives in this part. 1. Key definitions of terms and concepts which are used in impact assessment. You will learn a number of key terms which will help you with your impact assessment. 2. Understanding the importance of these terms and concepts and what role they play in the assessment process. You will learn the function and connection between these terms. And 3. Understanding the usage of the terms and concepts through real-life examples to provide context. You will be given an example of how these key terms and concepts can be applied. To better understand the real-life application of these key terms and concepts, we are going to use a case study throughout this part. The case study is illiteracy amongst children. For this fictive case, the circumstances are as follows. We are working with a small community in Western Africa of about 400 people. In the community, few children regularly attend school as their parents are mostly farmers and need help at home. The area has issues with low income, poverty, gender inequality, and general economic growth. Furthermore, the area struggles with extreme and shifting weather patterns due to climate change, making the family's harvests more unpredictable. We want to create a program to improve literacy amongst children ages 6 to 15 by increasing the quality of learning materials and the skills of teachers. Currently, the level of literacy is at 60%. The program will run throughout 2023, and we have already established contact with the municipality, a local NGO, donors, staff at the school, and the parents of the children. We also have a producer of school materials on board. We will be referring to this case study throughout the module. Key term 1, outcomes. In a project, the outcomes cover the results which the project or program aims to achieve. Outcomes are mostly different effects or impacts and are often goal-oriented and specific. Outcomes can be both short-term, medium-term, and long-term, and can have both a positive and a negative effect. As an example, positive impact may be benefits, advantages, or favorable outcomes resulting from the project, such as job creation, infrastructure development, improved services, or enhanced social well-being. Negative impacts could be adverse effects or consequences caused by the project, including environmental degradation, displacement of communities, loss of cultural heritage, or malfunctioning infrastructure. Returning to our case, these outcomes would be an increased literacy rate amongst school-aged children in the targeted community. This would be a positive impact which benefits society at large by enhancing social well-being. Key term 2, indicators. Indicators are measurable or observable characteristics that are used to track the progress towards achieving the outcomes. By monitoring these indicators, they can provide evidence of whether the wanted outcomes are being achieved. Indicators should follow the SMART module, which includes 5 different criteria for indicators. S. Indicators should be specific and should target a specific area which needs improvement. M. Indicators should be measurable, meaning that they need to be able to be quantified. A. Indicators should be attainable, in that they need to be realistic and have sufficient resources. R. Indicators should be relevant and align with other project objectives. And finally, T. Indicators should be time-bound, meaning that they need to have a deadline. If we apply this term to our case, the indicators could be the number of children who attend school regularly, as well as scores on literacy tests in 2023. If these indicators applied to the SMART model, it would look like this. S. The specific indicators are the scores on the literacy tests and the attendance at school. M. These indicators are easy to quantify, both the number of children in and out of school, as well as the number of children with high or low scores on the tests. A. Local resources such as teachers at schools and testing mechanisms would be required. R. The indicators align with the investigation of how extensive the issue is. And T. By adding 2023 as the deadline, the indicators are also time-bound. Key term 3, key performance indicators. Key performance indicators, or KPIs, are specific metrics or indicators which you use to measure and evaluate the performance and the progress and the impact of a project. KPIs are a set of indicators which all seek to both satisfy customers and employees while still being financially healthy. Examples of indicators could be systems, information, feedback, data, employees, behavior, vision, strategy, culture, or even values. The difference between indicators and KPIs is that KPIs are more strategic and overarching, while indicators are a lot more specific. In other words, indicators measure the direct results, whereas KPIs measure the process, the overall process of the project or program. If we apply KPIs to our case, we could measure the feedback from teachers on how efficient the program functions, or changes in student behavior as the program progresses. By measuring this, we can figure out if the clients, such as local governments, NGOs, or aid organizations, are happy with the progress. We can figure out if the project's finances are being put to good use. And we can figure out if the employees at the project are satisfied with the progress as well. Key term 4, indicators of sustainability. Indicators of sustainability are metrics or criteria in a project which are used to measure the project's contributions to the UN Sustainable Development Goals, which are also called the UN SDGs. This includes metrics and criteria within areas such as environmental protection, social equality, economic growth, and institutional capacity. The UN SDGs are divided into 17 goals, and under each goal are several measurable targets. Under each of these targets, one or several indicators can then be found. These indicators can be used to measure a project's contribution to the achievement of the goals. If we apply indicators of sustainability to our case, we can see that increasing literacy in children would directly contribute to the UN SDG 4, which is quality education. More specifically, the project would contribute to the following target under SDG 4, target 4.6. This reads, by 2030, ensure that all youth and a substantial proportion of adults, both men and women, achieve literacy and numeracy. If we go further under this target, we will find indicator 4.6.1, which says the proportion of the population in a given age group achieving at least a fixed level of proficiency in functional A, literacy, and B, numeracy skills by sex. By this, we can see that the project would help to achieve SDG number 4, containing target 4.6, which again contains indicator 4.6.1. This indicator would be the one to use as an indicator of sustainability, where the rest are considered a framework for these indicators. Key term 5, baseline study. The baseline of a project is the state or condition of the target population of the project or the system to be investigated before the project has been implemented. The baseline is used as a reference point where the changes and impact of the project can be measured against. At the beginning of the project, data is collected to establish this baseline as the start of the impact assessment. If we apply this to our case study, a baseline study would show that 60% of children in the community were literate before the project began. Key term 6, target. The target of a project is the level of overall improvement which the project is expected to achieve. The target is the level of how much improvement should come from the project outcomes and impacts. The target is usually measurable by terms such as percentages, monetary value, number of participants, degrees, etc. The target often uses the baseline as a starting point to assess the success of the project or program. For our case study, we could determine that the target would be to increase literacy levels to 90% of the children in the community by the end of the project. Key term 7, attribution. The attributions of the project are the process of identifying links between changes or impacts and tying them to the project or program. There are often many relevant factors at play when implementing a project. Attributions are used to prove that changes to the target population or the system that you're investigating or improving are attributed to the project or program. This is done because outside factors could also play a very big role in this development. By measuring the attributions of a project, it is possible to assess if the project has made a difference. When looking at our case study, the attributions could indicate that changes in literacy rates can be directly attributed to the project due to improved teaching methods and resources. Key term 8, counterfactuals. Counterfactuals are used to determine the extent of a project or program's impact. They are hypothetical outcomes or scenarios that provide an alternative description of what would have happened if the project or program had not been implemented. During a project, a counterfactual analysis is often made where the outcomes of the project or program are compared to these hypothetical outcomes. If we apply this to our case study, the counterfactuals could report that without the project or program that we are trying to implement, literacy rates would have remained at 60% or may have even decreased. Key term 9, project impact assessment. A project impact assessment is a process of evaluating or analyzing different potential effects or consequences which the project could have. This type of assessment is made on different aspects such as social effects, environmental effects, economic effects, and cultural factors. When applying the project impact assessment to the case, the report could show that the social effects could be an increase in social well-being and earning potential of the children. The environmental effects could be an increase in the use of natural resources, since you would increase the use and need for school materials. And economic effects could be an increase in economic independence and stability, not only for the children, but also for the entire community. Lastly, cultural factors could be changes in how education is viewed in the community, going from something out of reach to something which is now more obtainable. Key term 10, impact assessment methodologies. Impact assessment have different types of methodologies. This covers the different approaches or methods which are used to assess or evaluate the potential effects of a project. Some of these methodologies include environmental impact assessment, or also called EIA, which is an evaluation of the environmental effects of a project and is a form of environmental management which contributes to the project approval and decision making. Another one is social impact assessment, or SIA, which is an evaluation of the social effects of a project, which is often used by anthropologists when trying to get a project approved. Cost-benefit analysis is the last one and is also called CBA. It's a systemic approach to estimating the strengths and weaknesses of the effects coming from the project. It weighs the costs against the benefits in a project benefits and costs can both be social, economic, environmental, or cultural in character. If these methodologies are applied to our case studies, EIA could show that a potential increase in the natural resources, which comes with an increase in the need for school materials, could be mitigated somehow to get the project through to approval. SIA could show that the livelihoods and the future of the children would increase in quality alongside with the increase in literacy, and could also have other benefits such as improved health, food security, security in housing, and gender equality. CBA could then compare the two and show that the environmental costs of the projects is relatively low and could be mitigated, which then outweighs which is outweighed by the social benefits of the projects, which would add a lot of value to the community. Key term 11, social cost benefit analysis. A social cost benefit analysis is a methodology which assesses how the project influences social welfare. This is done by assigning monetary value to all social costs and benefits, including education, healthcare, well-being, and quality of life. Similarly to the cost-benefit analysis, the social costs are then weighed against the social benefits to inform decision-making. If a social cost-benefit analysis were to be made for our case study, it may show that social benefits may be better earning potentials for the children, economic growth, increased gender equality, and increased health due to increased income. Social costs, on the other hand, may be long prospects for when these changes will come, and a potential social stigmatization of children who do not attend school. Key term 12, impact forecasting. Impact forecasting is the act of predicting or estimating what potential outcomes or effects a project or program may have before it has been implemented. An impact forecast is often based on various models, data analysis, and expert knowledge. All the collected information is then written as a short report detailing the effects of the project or program. If we apply impact forecasting to our case, the forecast could show that the project could have the effect of improving livelihoods in the community due to the increased economic stability, and could also show that the gender gap would decrease as literacy amongst both boys and girls would increase. These predictions are usually based on other cases or general statistics. Key term 13, impact mitigation. Impact mitigations are strategies or measures which are implemented with the aim of reducing or minimizing negative impacts of a project on stakeholders or the environment. These strategies could help to reduce environmental degradation, biodiversity crises, food shortages, loss of revenue, loss of customers, loss of certificates, etc. If we apply this to our case, we can see that the environmental costs from our cost-benefit analysis before would be mitigated by one of these strategies or measures. An example of this could be to reduce the carbon footprint of the school by reducing electricity usage or paper usage. It could be to use renewable energy sources to power the community, or to replant areas with native trees to even out the environmental impact of using more school materials. Key term 14, impact monitoring. Impact monitoring is an ongoing process throughout the project where data is systematically collected and analyzed. This is done to assess the impact of the project during and after it has been implemented. This would mean that for our case, the impact would be monitored by collecting data from indicators such as the number of children attending school regularly and scores on literacy tests to be collected multiple times during 2023 to ensure that the project is progressing as planned. Key term 15, cumulative impacts. Cumulative impacts are the combined effects that a project possesses in combination with other planned projects within the same field or area. In other words, these impacts consider the shared, symbiotic, or compounding effect and nature of impacts. When applied to our case, cumulative impacts could inform us that the increased level of literacy amongst children could benefit planned projects to lift the community out of poverty, improve gender equality, or promote economic growth in the area. Key term 16, risk assessment. Risk assessment tools can help identify and evaluate the potential risks or uncertainties associated with the project. These risks can include social, environmental, economic, and operational risks, which means that risk assessment might need to be done on risks regarding financials, health, resource allocation, environmental impact, social security, cybersecurity, time management, etc. As risk assessment is a very wide field, it is often undertaken by one or a set of experts. However, a risk management plan is often required to be submitted with some applications. Here, each potential risk is detailed and categorized as high risk, medium risk, or low risk. If a risk assessment plan were to be made for our case, risks such as insufficient data or availability of data may be low risk, as data would be collected on site by the managing organization or company, whereas resource allocation may be high risk if fundings are insufficient or lacking. Key term 17, ex-ante evaluation. An ex-ante evaluation is a type of assessment which is made before a project is implemented. This is made in order to estimate the potential impacts, costs, benefits, and risks of the planned project. This will help evaluate the project before you implement it and help inform the decision-making process. If an ex-ante evaluation is applied to our case study, we can collect the impact reports from the cost-benefit analysis, social benefit, cost-benefit analysis, and risk assessment into one. This assessment would show that the project has long-term opportunities for economic growth and increased healthcare, but also increased gender equality, food security, and potential reduction of poverty. In combination with the easily mitigated environmental factors and the low risk of causing actual harm to the community, the project could therefore be implemented and give the wanted results. Key term 18, stakeholders. Stakeholders are different groups such as individuals or organizations who have either an interest or are investment or somehow affected by the project or program. These groups include project sponsors, different beneficiaries, local communities, government entities of any kind, corporations, or other relevant parties. For our case study, the main stakeholder would be the local community, And hereafter, it would be the local government, the involved NGOs, potential grassroots organizations, national education entities, the local municipality, sponsors of the project, and potential industry partners who could supply the school materials needed for the project. Key term 19, resilience planning. Resilience planning is the development of either strategies or different measures which are made to enhance the resilience and adaptability of the project to protect it from different potential negative impacts. These impacts could include climate changes, natural disasters, economic fluctuation, health crises, internal and external conflicts, or maybe labor strikes. If we apply resilience planning to our case study, a potential risk could be the extreme weather, such as hurricanes or heavy rainfall, which could affect the infrastructure in the community and prevent the children from attending school. A strategy which could be made could be to instate either emergency aid, which would help clear the roads faster, or a service where children and staff could be driven to school to ensure their safety. Key term 20, life cycle assessment. A life cycle assessment is an extensive evaluation of the entire environmental impact of a project throughout its life cycle. In other words, a life cycle assessment includes all environmental impact from a project's cradle to its grave. This includes resource extraction, different types of production, as well as the use and disposal of used materials. It also includes all the energy required, housing costs, and transportation. This assessment, as it is quite extensive, is usually undertaken by a team of experts and is quite extensive in terms of how long it takes as well. If a life cycle assessment is applied to our case, we would need to include all parts of the project, which both includes the planning process, the implementation phase, as well as the final evaluation. We would need to include all electricity used, potential costs of outpost housing or transportation throughout the project. And we would also need to include all the resources that has been extracted for the production and use of both production use and disposal of both school and office materials.